So hi, everybody. My name is Brenda Ulrich. I'm a intellectual property attorney. I do a lot in the publishing and higher education sectors, a lot in copyright and trademark law. I'm sad to say that my co-host is not able to be here due to a medical emergency in her family. So I will be hosting this one solo. And I think we want to talk, this is really to talk about generative AI, and get a sense from the TAA community, how you are feeling about it, what your concerns are as active authors. I am not, a textbook or academic author. However, I did the interesting experiment today, and I was going to start off by sharing with you all my screen. Let's see. Before I go here, can you all see the ChatGPT here? So what I did is I went to ChatGPT and I said, write an article about copyright in the style of Brenda Ulrich, which is me. And I don't publish much. I've done a couple blog posts and short articles, maybe for the TAA newsletter. And it spewed out this article here, which seemed very flowery to me. And I'm really wondering what it's drawing from, because I don't think this is how I write. I haven't gone through it carefully enough to see whether it's accurate, but I would highly recommend to you to try this on yourself. Type in ask it to write an article in your area of expertise in your style and see what comes up, because I think it's kind of frightening. So that's obviously one. ChatGPT is just one generative AI program out there. This, I think, was the one from Microsoft. Google has its own. There are many others. There are also a lot of generative AI art generators. So I asked this one to do a painting of Taylor Swift in the style of Andy Warhol, which is on my mind because there was just a big copyright case came out from the Supreme Court all about a photo of Prince that Andy Warhol turned into a distinctive Andy Warhol painting, and it got into questions of fair use and transformativeness. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on showing you how the software works, unless people want a little more of that, but I assume you all are somewhat familiar with the concept. I know it's all over the news, how this works. And there's certainly a lot of, from my perspective, a lot of legal questions that are going to come fast and furious as we move along. Is AI generated content protected by copyright? For starters, that article, could I register that with the Copyright Office? Could somebody else? Could they publish it? I know so far the Copyright Office very recently put out new regulations saying that generative AI content is not protectable as copyrighted content. You can't register it because copyrighted content has to be created by a human being. That's the rule. There was a case some years ago when somebody tried to get a monkey to take a selfie, and then there was a question whether they could register that, and the Copyright Office said no, because a monkey is not a human being. Now, there was pushback and there were questions, if I am refining my search so many times that I'm starting to really control the creative output, have we at some point crossed the line into where I am using this tool to really create, but it's my creation? But at least right now, they had a submission where somebody had done a graphic novel, and basically they used AI to create the illustrations. And the Copyright Office said, you can protect your text and your organization of the book, but not the art that's in it that you had AI generate. So they're trying to give some guidance on that. Those rules have only been out for a short time. Honestly, I'm not sure how they're going to enforce it. People can pretty easily lie if they want on those applications, but at least the standard is you don't register protection for it. Then there's the question of how the AI learns to do all this, right? Generative AI is trained on huge, huge data sets. There are questions about how it accesses those data sets. It's not really making copies when it accesses them. So it's not really, is it copyright infringement when it's not making copies? It's not quite, it's not copying that content, it's using it to educate itself. But there are actually lawsuits right now pending against several AI companies by companies like Getty Images and others who manage huge data sets, arguing that it's infringement. And they're trying to argue back that it's fair use. And these cases have not been decided. They're making their slow way through the courts. I know Congress is holding subcommittee hearings. I've tuned into a couple of them, and it's pretty interesting. It's actually refreshingly collegial because they really are trying to learn and talking to artists and authors and photographers and musicians and copyright professors to try to figure out, what are the dangers? Should Congress be legislating? Usually when Congress legislates about copyright, the technology's, light years ahead by the time the legislation gets passed. But alternatively, we're going to have judges deciding cases, and then that will be how the law evolves. The EU is right now looking into adopting AI regulations. They might set the standard just because they did it first. Their focus seems to be more on privacy issues or sort of profiling issues that unfairly harm people. When you use bad data, you get bad results, and so they're trying to protect against that. But you all probably are educators as much as authors. My sense is that in the education field, cheating has been a huge concern right off the bat. I mean, my son's 9th grade teacher sent home a noticing a couple kids used AI to write their papers, and so it's everywhere. Questions about learning how to research. If you're having an AI do all your work for you, in the legal field, are you going to not train your associates how to research and write a legal brief? There was a lawyer who got caught having a brief written by AI citing cases that didn't exist. It's just been everywhere. So it's sort of no matter what area of the world you look at, AI could have a huge impact. And so we put together this roundtable because largely we want to hear from you. I know the Authors Guild is getting really active in this space and trying to affect the law and the legislation around this to protect its members. And TAA, we are certainly a representative of authors, also of publishers. Arguably, authors and publishers may be very well aligned on this issue. We're not aligned on all issues, but in this one, everybody stands to get harmed, from AI. So I really kind of wanted to open it up to the floor for you all to kind of share your thinking about it, your questions about it, and also where you think TAA could have a role in that. And so I will be taking some notes. I can moderate and jump in, but I would love to have a conversation amongst us here. So I don't know if people want to raise their hands or if nobody's raising. Okay, I see Ruth's hand up.
Well, and Brenda, I'll just reiterate something that we chatted about a little bit when we had our mentoring session, which is that I'm going to develop a statement about that I will append to everything that I write and publish from here on, that this was not created by AI and it is not available for use by AI. That won't prevent it from being used, but it will make a public statement about my attitude about protecting my own materials.
Ruth, you were actually my inspiration to have ChatGPT write something in my own style, because you said that's happened to you. And so
I haven't tried it yet. It's too scary.
Yeah. So have anybody? Oh, Ken, I see your hand up.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to talk about this a little bit in my session that I'm presenting at tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, if anybody's interested, just to get a little plug in. But I sort of look at this almost like the onset of the internet, where that raised all kinds of concerns. It made it really easy to, and there were all kinds of concerns about the internet, and there still are. I mean, people can Google things, and it's not that, it's different. And you did a good illustration there, Brenda. I mean, it's different, but it's not all that different from getting information from the internet and then just using that. And I think that it's something that we are going to have to learn to live with. And I think it's going to revolutionize a lot of what, sorry, for some reason that automatically muted me, but so I think we're going to have to definitely, come to terms with its existence and learn how to use it in our writing and in our teaching and with how we evaluate students, terrifying thing that we don't want anything to do with. I think it can be very, very useful, but as you mentioned, Brenda, we have to be very, very careful about how we use it, and not to trust it and learn what to use it for. And these are things we could have a long conversation. I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but I just wanted to say that for those of you who haven't tried it, it really is an amazing, unbelievable thing in terms of what it can generate very, very quickly. And I think we need to be careful, but I would encourage you not to sort of, dismiss it as a technophobe, because I think it's going to be here to stay, and I think it's going to be a part of our world going forward.
Yeah, and Ken, if I can follow up, I mean, that's a really good point. If it's here to stay rather than fearing it, learn to work with it. It's also in its infancy, which to me means it's maybe not a great area to start legislating in too soon, as we are seeing it, evolve. But there's actually some call from the companies to police them, because they are a little scared of their own power. But I see a couple of people in the comments have raised, adding statements to syllabi about whether you use, we allow use of AI, and if so, what rules? Are students cheating with AI? So maybe people can weigh in on that. I mean, how do you, do you tell your students simply no, or do you try to work with AI to teach your students to use it responsibly? Maybe people have thoughts on that. And I see some comments along those lines in the chat.
I'm sorry, Brenda, were you asking me or just the group?
I was opening it to the floor.
Yeah, okay.
But if anybody has specific experience with their students, we'd be interested to hear about that, good, bad, or otherwise.
I pointed out that my institution is asking. I brought up that email as just they give us 3, and I don't know the answer. I'll start off with that. So the email says, here are your 3 different statements that you can choose. Use prohibited, and then there's a few sentences that under that, and then use only with prior permission, and then the third option is use with acknowledgement. So it's giving us some choices, and I know nothing about it, so that's why I'm here.
Yeah. Cheryl? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that my institution, our library and writing center, actually released a guidance for students. They divided up into 2 columns, and I'll try and find it and post it in the chat. But it basically said, here's what you can use AI for, and here's what you can't use AI for, right? And it tried to give them some ideas as far as like using it as a starting point for your research, maybe helping you figure out how to format your citation, right? Those kinds of things. And then, don't use it to write your paper. Don't use it for these sort of assignments. So, I mean, I thought it was great that they kind of made, just trying to be proactive about it. And I think from a textbook publishing standpoint, I've been thinking about what can we automate, right? Because that's where ChatGPT can be so powerful. Where can we use it to? What are those tasks that we all despise doing that maybe ChatGPT can be helpful for, or even in idea generation, right? I mean, this isn't textbook publishing related, but I've had a friend plug in, can you give me an itinerary? I'm going to be visiting San Diego for 5 days. What are like these things? This is my budget. This is put in all the parameters, right? Use it as a starting point. And it's. I heard someone say that someone compared it to your unpaid intern who needs a lot of help. And so you can use it as a starting point, but know that you have to go in and do a lot of review and checking and modification. I don't know if any of that answers the questions, but I'd be interested in hearing what other people have to say too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious about people in the textbook authoring arena, or just the authoring arena. How valuable is it for, as you say, research or like a first draft generator that you can then tweak with. I mean, I've heard a lot of companies are using it to write manuals, instruction manuals that nobody wants to write and almost nobody reads, but they have to be added with the product, that kind of thing.
I teach in a field that has more questions than answers, which is human medicine, human physiology. And I'm interested in playing with it myself to see what it comes up with based on the literature I understand. When the internet first came out, my students researched their projects on the internet, and they came up with some really weird stuff. So I always told them, even if you're reading textbooks, read at least 2 or 3 sources before you come to any conclusion about whether it's right or wrong. I don't think we can stop them from using it, but I think we can guide them in using the tool.
Hi, I have another comment. My name is Niti Villinger, formerly of Hawaii Pacific University. I think one of the challenges, even before you use the features, is the fact that there are at least 20 or 30 websites that offer the service. So each website might have different rules. Each website might have different methods for using it. Each website might have different considerations. So I think when students or other people use AI or ChatGPT, the question is, which tool are they using and how prevalent is it? How popular is it? Are the ways to use it similar across the different websites?
Yeah, and I see Cheryl, you've had a couple comments in there. Yeah, you get different results using the same generative AI tool if you ask the question more than once, right?
Hi, I'm Barbara Price. I'm a development editor for publishers. I know that because ChatGPT AI generated content is not copyrightable, publishers are very concerned that if you use that software to generate content that they're publishing, it then it calls into question your ability to, if they can't copyright the material, then your ability to get royalties on that material and their ability to actually sell that material, is compromised somewhat. So that is a concern. And also using your own, if you use this material or use this package to evaluate, write something of your own, you're in effect, or like already published material of your own. It's training the software on your stuff, and that actually becomes an issue too. And Brenda, you probably have more insight into that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the first part of what you said, I mean, I was working with a small publisher recently, and they are adding to their standard contract that the author needs to warrant they haven't used AI to generate any of the content that they're submitting. So, and if that becomes the norm among publishers, then the question is, can you even use it when you're working on your books without potentially violating your publishing contract?
I just want to say that I practice. I'm sorry, go ahead. I've used it and it's amazing. I mean, in terms of like trying to get to the answer fast, a solution, as I'm also a writer, and it's like, wow, this stuff is amazing. And so, I mean, the promise versus the peril is, that's what we're dealing with right now, but it is an amazing tool.
Paul?
Yeah, I haven't played with it personally myself. Haven't had a chance to do that yet, but I was trying to keep a very open mind going into this, and I was hearing from friends and colleagues, like many of us have, both the pros and the cons. For example, I had a colleague who teaches in anatomy and physiology, and he said, I really needed a fun creative game for my class and I didn't have much time to do it. And boy, AI generated it for me in no time. And it was a wonderful game. And it came up with the rules and the point spread and everything. And the students loved it and it was great. And then on the other hand, I've had students say, wow, you know, all these other kids are cheating and using AI to create all their essays and they're getting full credit and I'm not cheating and I'm not getting full credit. And so, you know, you hear both sides, the pros and the cons, but I think what really gives me pause is when some of the original creators of the AI come out and say, we need to put the brakes on this. It's expanded and grown at a rate that I never thought possible. And we haven't even begun to consider the ramifications of it, but we've unleashed it and the genie's out of the bottle. I think that for me really makes me think, yeah, the genie's out of the bottle and maybe no turning back and we may need to accept it, but it is kind of scary to me. It still scares me to this point. And I've tried to really be objective, but I just think there's lots of scary things going on with it.
Ken?
Yeah, so once you start, for those of you who haven't used it yet, once you start to use it, you get a sense of how it does things. And just as probably before this, you could read paper and without even checking, kind of suspect whether it was written by that particular student or whether it had been plagiarized. And I really think that you're going to be able to tell if a paper sounds like it was written by ChatGPT or some other AI source. There's certain things that it does, and there are certain things that it doesn't do. And also, it's not completely accurate. Or you get a question, it will not give you the right answer. It is not infallible by any means. Whatever it tells you, you always need to fact check and double check, as the lawyer discovered that Brenda mentioned. But I'm not teaching this summer, so I know it was out in the spring and I was kind of aware of it, but it's really only been since the end of the spring semester that I've taken more of an interest in this. And certainly in the fall, and thank you all who've shared, you know, the resources for ideas for syllabus. And I'm definitely going to use those. Definitely want to address my students. I will let them know that professors aren't stupid. I think we'll be able to tell if they're, you know, if they have their paper written by ChatGPT. Yeah, I agree with what everybody said. You know, I think it's a great tool. You can use it for lots of things, and I encourage that. But I don't think, I think we need to address it with our students. I wouldn't be, I'm not that worried about not being able to tell whether a student has written something themselves or on ChatGPT. And of course, we want to probably adjust our assignments to make them less, you know, I don't know, available to enter into ChatGPT and get the right kind of response. You know, maybe by, you know, combining things that we specifically do in class or assign for class and asking them to reference those specific things. I know you could probably put those parameters into ChatGPT or other AIs as well, but I don't think it's going to do as good a job. And like I said, I think you'll probably be able to tell anyway. So I hope that's helpful.
I want to mention that you can give it an assignment to ChatGPT and say, write this in the style of a college freshman. Write this in the style of a sixth grader. I've had them write, you know, talk about photosynthesis that a second grader can understand. So a savvy student might say, well, if it sounds too good, they're going to know it's not me. So we're going to say, do it in my style or do it in, you know, some lower level. And then it gets tricky to tell if it's really generated by them or AI.
Yeah, and Jocelyn asks, will institutional plagiarism checkers be able to spot these? And I wondered about that too, because it's, you know, there is technology out there that can find when you're just wholesale copying things from the internet. But once it's generating new text, I don't know that those checkers will get there. But how far behind is the technology that will be able to detect that something is AI generated? Or, is there a way, and that might be the source of some sort of regulation that you have to somehow, attach something, watermark it in some way that it's known that it's AI generated. But I don't think that technology exists yet, as far as I know. And Barbara, to your kind of other point, the problem is the AI keeps getting smarter. Right now it generates, faces with extra teeth or whatever else, but it's like the more it learns, the better it gets, the more sophisticated, the harder it is to detect. And I think that's also, sort of the deep fakes that are coming probably with the next presidential election. There's a lot of fear around that too, which is sort of off topic here, but it's always getting smarter.
I know there are a few institutions that have integrated in AI detection and would turn it in. I was talking to a colleague at the University of Pittsburgh, and she said for the first time she decided to run it through, and a paper came back 100% AI generated, and she was able to detect that. But I've seen it. I work with a lot of graduate students across institutions and faculty members, and I've heard graduate students say that, they wrote dissertation chapters on it. I've heard generating lesson plans, getting like a rubric from a website, grade this paper based on the rubric at this link. And it will literally put the paper in, and it'll generate the responses with the rubric and comments and assessing the paper based on the rubric that the link was sent to. And so it's being used in all types of spaces. But a friend sent me an article from the Washington Post on June 2nd, and it was talking about how it's replacing some jobs. It was particularly talking about some copy editors. And so the whole point of the article at the conclusion was basically that companies have started moving towards using AI to produce content. They know it's of lesser quality, but the payoff is worth it to them at this point. And so they know it doesn't produce the quality that a human can, but because of the dollars that they're saving from that employing people, they're willing to deal with the. However, they're also becoming open to lawsuits and other things because of the inaccuracy of the information. And so, my thoughts are kind of, pros and cons all over the place. With Ken, that it's a tool that we have to use. I think we're going to have to, as educators, have to be able to guide students into how to use it as a tool, as to what it can and cannot do. And with Paul, once I saw, okay, the creators of this are like, whoa, stop, I'm resigning. We need regulations. It does let you know that they know information way more that's going on that scares them. And so, it's just all playing out before us. And we can only continue to educate, have these conversations, get people to think, question, and go from there.
Yeah, I think you raise a really good point and I've heard about this too, that, even as the sort of very creative communities of artists and musicians and painters are speaking out a lot publicly, a lot of companies are just going full ahead using it and not talking about it. They're just using it to replace graphic designers, to replace, jingle writers, to replace sort of the not Andy Warhol level art, but just the day-to-day creative content that they need. And as you say, the trade-off for them is and writing manuals and all that kind of stuff. And that sort of takes me back to, the question of, textbook authors. I mean, when you talk about, they can generate an article or an explanation for all different ages and levels, for a second grader or an eighth grader. What do you all think about that as authors? And have your publishers said anything, or where are you thinking on that? Patricia?
Can I add a comment? It's not necessarily directly to what you just said, Brenda, but one thing I think we all need to be thinking about as writers, academic writers, is that what is it going to do, not only on a legal aspect, but on the ethical aspect related to that implicit contract between reader and writer. That contract that says, reader, dear reader, you can trust this material was generated by little old me. And we've operated on this implicit contract for millennia, maybe. as authors. And I'm concerned about what is the whole not knowing if you're reading something generated by a machine or by a person, what is that going to do to the social capital of our societies in terms of trust? What is that going, because it's already started to affect me with my students. So I teach a writing productivity course this semester in the spring, and I said, look, I allow you to use ChatGPT or whatever AI you want to use to help you edit your assignment, but just let me know that you used it, because I want to learn to see if I can detect it or not, right? And I had one student that clearly did not tell me he used an AI tool, but it was clear that to me that that student used it. And then that feeling that I had, like, is it this person's writing, not this person's writing? How do I approach this? How do I grade it? How do I relate to it? And I'm going, oh my goodness, this is destroying my link of trust with the students that I tried to build in class, and I felt horrible about it. So I just wanted to throw that out, that the, you know, with all technologies advance very quickly, but the ethics don't follow, and especially in education. Education is always lagging behind in its strategies. So maybe we as authors can think about something. I don't know. I don't have anything to offer except pointing to the problem. Sorry.
Just to follow up on what was just said, kind of a lingering thought in the back of my head is I just think from a very human point of view and not a technological point of view, I asked myself, what was the process of how I became a good writer? And one of the best professors I ever had was my English 101 teacher. He put the whole emphasis not on creating just the final product and grading the final product, but the process of writing. It was the process. It was the revision process. It was, and all of us as authors know the value of the revision process. And that's where the work comes in. That's where the personal growth comes in. And to me, the technological thing is just AI. What AI is saying is that doesn't matter anymore. I can create something instantaneously that's good. Why don't you want that? It's basically a slap in the face to the process of becoming a better writer and building skills as a human being. And so I'm kind of, this is what really sticks in my craw and makes me think, as Patricia just said, this is not good for society, you know, and that's the part that I just can't get away from and kind of eats at me. And I do think it's definitely I can see it easily displacing lots of copy editor jobs, lots of different jobs, graphic design artists, all kinds of people. And so, I mean, is it a good thing in that sense?
Let me make a comment on this. Excuse me. Hi, my name is Niti Villinger again from formerly Hawaii Pacific University. Another way to view ChatGPT and these other AI products would be, you know, if you're not using it, why not read it? And how is it different from reading a book? You know, there can be good content. There can be useful content. It can be educational. Of course, you need the sources, but if you just look at it from a purely reading point of view, it's very interesting material. And it presents the material in an organized manner, in a structured manner, which could be helpful maybe to students, just from a reading point of view.
Patricia?
Yeah, I agree that it can be very useful for reading and for learning also. But tagging on what Paul said, if we as writers and academic writers especially, if we define writing as thinking, so for me, that's how I teach writing, is writing is thinking. So I think the challenge with AI, and I'm not totally against it either, I think there's really valuable contributions it can make, but the question is going to become how much of our ability to think autonomously will we want to delegate to machines? because that's going to be a reality. And what we're doing right now is we're participating in an experiment. I have not started an account at ChatGPT or any other AI, because every time I go in to log in and they want my phone number and they want information, and I'm going, I am just consenting to participate in an experiment without signing an informed consent. And we're training this tool, and sometimes I want to train it for the good and all that, but I'm still leery. I'm not sure. So the idea is this: if writing is thinking, if we're going to have machines write for us, they're going to be doing the thinking for us. It's as simple as that. And how much of that do we want it to happen? And then again, it ties into that issue of trust. How can I trust that this was written by Paul when I read something that Paul wrote, or that's written by Brenda, and I hear their voices in that or not? But what does that do to trust as a society? That's what I'm concerned about. But there's huge optimal sides. So if nobody knows about it, go look at a website called Typeset, typeset.io. That is, you also have to create an account, and I haven't yet, but some of my students have. You can actually drag and drop articles in PDF form in there and ask it to summarize it for you. Now, here's the beauty of it. It can do it for any article in any language. So for us who do systematic reviews of the literature, for instance, and we use the excuse that we're not including articles published in other languages besides English because we can't read them, we don't have an excuse anymore. We can use this tool and it can summarize an article. And I have had it tested. A student of mine who's bilingual tested it in another language, and she said it was a pretty darn good summary of the article. And I asked for the summary in English, but the article was in Portuguese. And so it's like, yeah, it did a great job. So yes, it's going to be wonderful for learning, I think. But we really, as authors, need to be careful of our trade and of our trust, I guess.
Gotta say, as a copyright lawyer, that like makes my head explode, that you're dropping in PDF articles and it's generating summaries, and I don't know how much of that content it's using. That is, whew, that's troubling for me, but yeah.
I love what Patricia said. I think we know that about writing, but I think the perception of writing is it's just writing. It's just, it doesn't help you think better. It doesn't help you organize your thoughts. It doesn't help you be coherent. It doesn't help you do all of these things. And so because the perception is it doesn't do all these higher order things, then it's replaced. We can outsource that. I think I do a lot of workshops for different universities, and about a year and a half ago, a gentleman sat in the back of he was in the back of the workshop, and he waited till the entire workshop was over. And then he raised his hand and he said, why do we need to learn to write anymore if we have AI? And his area of research, he's in grad school doing research on all of these things. And my point was, well, this is what writing is. Writing is a reflection of your thoughts. Writing is your ability to critically think. Writing is your ability to articulate a clear point, to organize it well, to support it well. But I just don't think it registers with people that that's what writing does. And so that question has just popped up more and more and more and more. Why do we need to learn how to write? What is the value of writing? And I think we have to do a better job of communicating the value of writing, because we know it's going to impact thinking and decision making and all types of other things. And the AI, you don't even have to sign up for an account. Like if it's a new version of Microsoft or whatever, there's automatically an 8-bar. It's built into, so it's infiltrating just everywhere.
And this is really a great conversation. And now that we're getting going, of course, we're nearly out of time. Since we only have a few minutes left, I want to kind of throw back what I started with, which is, what can the role of TAA be here for all of you, as we move into this brave new world? I was going to put my email in the chat. So, because we would like to sort of get a working group going, to talk about these issues and maybe discuss, when we should be taking action? Is it lobbying? Is it, whatever it is? If any of you are interested to kind of be a part of that, and I can't tell you exactly what it will be because that's what we're trying to figure out. I think we are we obviously all have to stay on top of this issue. It's going to affect everybody on this chat and in this organization. And I think the kinds of issues you all are raising, might not get aired to the people who need to hear it enough, and so if you would like to, be a part of that as we evolve it, maybe to have more discussions about it, to figure out, do we need to help authors give guidance on their publishing contracts, or, share resources for instructors? Any of that, I think is on the table. But, we want, this is an organization for authors. And so we want to make sure that we are doing this for our authors. So, if you have ideas, even if you don't want to be part of a task force or whatever, if you have ideas of what you think TAA could be doing on this front, we would love to hear that too. Please share that with me. So, I'll my email address is in the chat, or you can send to Kim. She's, Kim Pollock is fully on top of this as well. Any extra thoughts you have or interest. And then I want to, throw it back to you guys for the last couple of minutes. If you have any thoughts on that right now, would love to hear it. And I promise I won't put you on a committee if you don't want to be by talking right now.
I'm just going to say, I think it's a great idea. I'm in.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm interested as well, and I know that one of the things that some of the creators have been saying that that worries them is that AI's ability to spread untruths, fake news, just that's a concern too. It's not trustworthy.
Sorry, Renata?
No, I said I read an article that said it's called hallucinations, the ability to give wrong information with confidence.
Right.
But I'm interested as well.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, well, I will at least try from the legal standpoint to keep this, keep you guys updated as the law evolves, to the extent it affects all of you, because that's an area I'm most fixated on at the moment. I'm actually going to the Copyright Society meeting starting Sunday, and this is on the agenda there too. So there's lots of speculation and discussion going on there. All right, I'm going to try and grab these names from the chat before they kick us out. But please, if you said you are interested, please do email me as well, just so I can be sure to have your name in a couple places. And thank you all so much for coming to the roundtable and all your great contributions. It's really been fascinating.